It's called trans-inclusive radical misogyny. What we do here at DylanBurnsTV headquarters. It's what we do here.
Identitarianism is one of the biggest things that I have a problem with due to my family history being, I know it's kind of a meme, but mixed.
Wait, the thing is with Tim Pool and his like constant quest against identity politics is he will always pick up his identity to argue against identity politics. Anytime you watch him, he'll be like, I hate the identity politics, and let me tell you why. Because of my background as a X person and XY or whatever, I don't like, you're using identity politics to argue against identity politics. It's like murdering somebody to like stop murder. Like, what do you mean?
And this comes from when we look at affirmative
But Tim,
action.
isn't that identity politics? You're saying your view on this is informed. You're against identity politics as informed by your identity.
Yeah, it is what it is. The ACLU, when they supported affirmative action at Harvard, which lumps all Asians, Indian, Chinese, Laotians into one category, and I find that offensive as an Asian person. And so when I come out and say,
find that offensive as an Asian person.
To say, you should be able to argue whether it's offensive or not offensive, right or not right, without saying because you are part Asian. You find like that's identity politics, which you claim to be against.
I agree. And I think the clarification then, I think what we're discovering here is that it's not so much the core idea of identity politics, it's the application of in ways that either is reductive or authoritarian.
Everything you're building here right now, right? Do you want the government to tell you how to do all these things and all the regulations that you got to have your electric?
Oh, by the way, here's the official Hippy Dippy rules document. So for those who were questioning me earlier about my rules, okay, on why Vaush is no longer champion, each guest will have a short opening statement where there will be no interruptions. Each guest will have a closing statement where there will be no interruptions. The last time you can address a previous topic is in the opening and closing statement of the next topic. Each guest will should adhere as to YouTube and Twitch TOS. Do not use any slurs or words that would target immutable characteristics. If Dylan is talking, it is a moderate. Please do not talk while Dylan is moderating. The Hippy Dippy Championship shall defend their title every 1 to 2 months. You see that tiny little dot next to it, that little asterisk? Make sugar your favorite spice. That is, of course, no, it's kindness. Now, what a lot of you don't notice is if you zoom in and you get down here and you get really down here in this tiny little thing at the bottom, which is very easy to read, though, if you read it carefully, of course. If the Hippy Dippy Championship champion fails to defend their title within the allotted time period, the title shall be vacated. So, I mean, it's not my fault that Vaush didn't read the fine print here. It's right there, okay? And it's very easy to see when you zoom out. Like it's right there. Look. See? It's right there. You can see it. You see it right at the bottom? That line is right there. It's right there. It's very obvious. So I'm sorry that you all can't read. That's you guys, okay? Get owned by facts and logic. Let's get back to the video.
Thing this far from this and like all of
the regulations like that for construction are important though. You do have to make sure that people don't do stupid shit. But make sure you don't have a power line that's near a water line. There's a lot of.
But I would put most of that on the builders though. They want to build things that are good. Now I get it.
That's not true. Listen, people.
People are going to build
corners.
So my father worked in construction. I think he was a welder on like on skyscrapers. My dad fell 3 stories off of a building because the people working there didn't want to give him proper safety equipment, and it disabled him for the rest of his life. That is not necessarily true. I'm sure they're the individual worker, and certain companies want to, but a lot of them are going to cut corners here, there, everywhere if they can to make an extra buck. Many companies are incentivized to. If they can cut corners, they will. You can see in a lot of places with less regulations on construction, definitely in a lot of countries in the world that are not the United States, and even in the United States, when we saw the recent collapse of that building that's going to kill possibly like 100 or more people that we're still trying to pull the bodies out of. We haven't found a single survivor yet. That isn't caused by people being so dedicated to a good job without regulation. That stuff is many times caused by a lack of regulation and oversight.
All the time. Like, you have to have regulations when it comes to construction methods or people are going to get fucked.
They cut corners when there are regulations anyway.
They do. They would cut a lot more if there weren't regulations.
I'm not
If
totally...
you go to third world countries and look at construction methods, they're fucking dangerous.
Yeah.
I love the argument from Dave Rubin, right? It'd be like, well, if you have speed limits, people are still going to speed. Yeah. Of course, there's going to always be people who break the law or will do their best to push the limits of the law. But if you don't have the law at all, then there's going to be no incentive whatsoever to follow the law or follow good practice because there'll be no penalties.
That's why schools collapse on kids in foreign countries sometimes. Like,
well, I'm not telling you that I'm against all regulation, period. That's where I said intellectually I like that argument, because you could make I think you can make a very sound argument that competition would force people to do better work. Like, if you're a plumber, you have a vested interest in doing the best plumbing.
When we have added more workplace safety regulations, workplace safety incidents and deaths have plummeted. That's point blank period. When we have more unions, workplace safety incidents go down and the amount of pay and benefits to workers go up. That's true across the board. And I mean, it's not you don't need to do magical research or science to figure it out why that's the case. If you make people adhere to rules when it comes to workplace safety, when it comes to fair standards and practices, then more likely businesses are going to have to treat their workers better, keep their workers safe, and go by fair practices and have a little bit of restraint when it comes to cutting corners.
Plumbing job you can, so that people will rate you on Yelp so that you will get more work. You don't have a vested interest in cutting corners. Now, you might, right? You're going to push it as much as you can to save as much time and energy.
By the way, a building just collapsed. Like 3 days ago. 3 days ago, a building just collapsed. There's still tons of people missing that they're going to have to dig out of the rubble due to a lack of oversight. Why weren't they incentivized to build the perfect building there? Because if they cut corners, they get to keep more money in their pocket. Over 150 people still missing.
And money as you can, but once you go over that edge, you don't want to be known as the guy that you tighten something too much so that you flooded the house, or when you're building a house.
You're thinking logically, though. When people fuck things up and short things and do things terrible, they're not thinking logically.
But I don't think it's the government. I don't think it's the government that they're like, the government gave me this regulation, so that's why I'm going to do it right.
Well, if they didn't have any regulations, there'd be no.
Well, no, I do think that people would. No, 100%. There's a reason why there's reasons why people follow laws, right? If you disagree with the law that limits like you cutting corners in construction, it can be true that law is the only reason why you don't cut corners during construction, because you don't want to have to deal with the economic or criminal penalties of cutting corners that could end up killing people. Yes, putting laws in place might make people follow the law.
Incentive whatsoever to do it right.
No, there would be an incentive.
If they knew there were no inspectors, no one was going to check their stuff and make sure that their stuff was up to code. Listen, man, I was in construction my whole life. My dad was an architect.
Okay, I'm so. Ooh, Dave Rubin chose the wrong podcast host to talk construction with when it comes to removing regulations. But it's magical to me that Dave Rubin is just on this podcast discovering how the law works and how laws disincentivize breaking the law.
Yeah. I've been in construction since I was a little kid. You fucking need regulations. These guys, a lot of people that are in construction, they'll do whatever the fuck they can to make money, and it's not good for the people that have the house, because they might have that house for 5-10 years before that problem manifests itself.
Hillary, Trump.
Dave has not. Joe Rogan has not let Dave on since his podcast. There's a lot of hints that I've seen people. I forget the YouTube video, but why Joe Rogan won't let Dave Rubin on his podcast anymore. And like, oh my God, can I find this YouTube clip quick? And there's Dinesh D'Souza, everybody's favorite fake historian. 1 second. Let me look this up. I am sharing this YouTube account with like 3 people. Geek and Katarana. I don't know which one of us are watching these Family Guy clips, but if I find out who it is, fired. I'm sorry. Okay, what was I looking up? Oh yeah, Joe Rogan, Dave Rubin podcast anymore.
Dave Rubin, ladies and gentlemen. How are you, buddy?
What's up? And between UPS and FedEx and Amazon,
so
and
they
Owens
argue,
and blah blah blah.
And then afterwards, we already watched a clip.
Once or one more?
3 times.
So there was one particular incident where Rogan was asking you about why you believe in less government control.
Yeah.
People felt like you didn't know what you were talking about.
Is there a difference between, say, what Sam Seder does to Dave Rubin?
Mental incompetent. Do you mean that they're ignorant, or that they're mentally ill or cognitively limited?
Cognitively limited.
Cognitively limited.
With Dave, there's enough moments where he's misstepped, where they just feel like, okay, we got a wounded antelope.
Yeah.
A wounded
Because people
antelope.
like to get sneaky and use. No, I'm a classic liberal.
Yeah.
Oh, what is that? What is that? You're a
Exactly.
fucking Republican.
Yes, you're just a Republican.
It's very important.
I mean, again, visit any third world
A
country after an
wounded
earthquake
antelope.
and look at all the crumbled buildings with no rebar and go, do you really want no building inspectors and no regulations
Exactly.
on like,
Yep.
is that what
The
you're
thing is,
fighting for? Because
in major cities, the amount of regulations that have increased due to earthquakes, definitely as we're going to have to face the realities of global climate change, that are going to be needed to keep skyscrapers from just tumbling down, killing thousands of people at a time. Imagine one earthquake that causes like 10 to 20 different 9/11s in one city at a time. Without proper building regulations, that's a reality we could face.
it'll all fucking crumble.
Dude, I've had that argument with people, that stupid libertarian argument. I'm like, look, my dad's an architect. My stepfather's an architect. I grew up on construction sites. You have to have inspectors. If you don't have inspectors, man, you're fucked. Like, these guys are, there's a lot of dirtbags out there making houses. They're bad people. They're cutting corners and stealing money and watering down the cement. Like, the fuck out of here. You can't let the market.
I mean, not to mention, like, the mafia has like a long history of being involved in construction. Are we really gonna trust the mafia and having like a high level of integrity when it comes to not cutting corners to get a job done?
Side.
Will you go on Joe Rogan's podcast, and will you have libertarian presidential VP candidate on your show before the election? Will I go on Rogan's podcast? I asked him, and our PR people asked him about a bajillion times to go on for my book. We did not get a response as far as I know, so I don't know what happened there. It's a little weird for me to say that publicly. I don't know what happened.
Even if you disagree with the way people feel about so many different things, it doesn't mean you can't be their friend. It doesn't. And I'm telling you, we got it wrong, man.
Sweet.
Here's what's important. What's important is whoever that person is, they got to be sincere. Now, as soon as you feel like someone's a grifter, you got to cast them out.
Right.
You got to cast them out because they got to figure that out on their own, and they got to apologize.
That's cool, man.
Listen, you can be wrong, but you have to be honest. And if you're just bullshitting, then I can't hang out with you.
Dude.
Joe Rogan just announced recently that he's moving to Texas.
Yeah, well, the funny thing about Rogan moving to Texas is Rogan was a Bernie supporter, so I don't know that the Texans really want Rogan there. That's for I suppose that's for them to decide.
Maybe
but
in Austin.
Yeah, but do you really want more Bernie supporters in Texas? That's a disaster. Ted Cruz was like, "Welcome to Texas, Rogan."
To be clear, Ted Cruz won his election by I think like 2 to 3% against take the guns away, take the AR. We're gonna take your AR-15. What's his name? Beto O'Rourke. So I don't think like Texas is as Republican to the core as you really think it is. Like there are a lot of Democrats. The Texas Democratic Party is a very active and somewhat competitive at the state and national level Democratic Party. So the idea that why is a Democrat moving to Texas? Well, number one, it could be for family reasons. It could be for a lot of reasons. But just because they're a Democrat or a Bernie supporter doesn't mean they can't live in Texas.
And it's like, well, if you're going to import those ideas, that's a problem. But so, if I was the average Texan conservative, I would be pretty worried when, say, Joe Rogan, I like Joe, but, when Joe Rogan, who was a Bernie supporter, he's fleeing California to set up shop in Texas.
California. I love how everybody talks about it, right? When it comes to California, that people are fleeing the state. absolutely fleeing the state, that it's covered in heroin needles. There's feces everywhere. It's crime is just in every corner of the city. You can't basically walk down the street without getting shot. I had a lovely time in LA. It was an actual blast. Probably one of my favorite vacations I've taken recent. Definitely, it was actually was the first vacation I've taken in like 2.5, 3 years. I don't take many vacations. I probably work a little too much, but. Why is it fleeing the state and not like they just moved? Like fleeing it. There's a million reasons why somebody can move. They are fleeing the state, dude. Look at the numbers. What is with this disaster speak? Okay, let's all remember, California is the world's like 7th largest economy, and they're just one state in the United States of America. Destiny said he's moving to Florida. Okay, if you are fleeing California to go to Florida, I'm sorry. But you know what that is, Destiny? That's League of Legends brain rot. If you've decided you're going to leave California to go to Florida, that's League of Legends corrupting and rotting your brain to its very core. If that's where you're going to go to after leaving California. Oh, I want to leave California. This is too crazy nonsense for me. Let me go to Florida instead.
And you're excited because it's kind of cool that Joe Rogan lives there, but it's like, he's gotten the big ideas wrong, and you have to be worried about that. That's
he's gotten the big. Dave Rubin claiming that Joe Rogan's gotten the big ideas wrong. Who was Dave Rubin basically certain was going to win the election? I'm just curious. Was his prediction like a Joe Biden landslide, or Joe Biden over 300, or like what was his prediction? I'm just very curious.
That's not a shot at Joe Rogan personally, but that's.
Destiny is sounding more like Florida Man recently. Destiny is looking more like Florida Man recently. I'm not trying to be mean to Destiny, right? Because, you know, I know Destiny functions off of my kindness. But, I mean, he's starting to look a little bit more like Florida Man as days go by, you know? A little bit more and more like Florida Man. Like, this looks like the type of guy, like one of those, like mugshots where it's going to be like, Florida Man, like I don't know, like tries to have sex with light post. This looks like one of those mug shots, 100%. Caveman thawed out from ice.
It's just a reality.
They say the first step to recovery is admitting there's a problem. This, therapists believe, is crucial because denial ain't just a river in Egypt.
That's hilarious. Okay, back to where we're watching.
Seems to me that you've bashed Hillary. Now you're trying to back off a little bit. Are you saying that Trump, an unknown quantity, is more dangerous than a known crook?
So,
yes, and we were proven that in the last 4 years. Somebody could okay. So let's say that I'm a bully. Right? Let's say that there's there's an all equivalent to the situation, but let's say there's two people, right? One is a bully, right? They've maybe that you're used to. They've shoved you maybe a few times. They've done some good things for you maybe once in a while. Maybe they give you a pizza slice every once in a while, but you know, they've been mean. They haven't been very nice. And then you have someone else. This is the new kid on the block. He has like his hoodie over his head. And like one of the first things he says is, they're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists. I assume some are good people. We need to bomb the families of terrorists. I am calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States. Or in this case, it would be the school playground. That guy seems a little unstable. I think I'll stick with the first option personally. Also, good point from chat. Trump is also a known crook who screwed his own workers out of salaries, and I don't even need to get into the whole Scotland debacle with the golf course, do I?
first of all, Dinesh, you keep calling her a crook, but you just got out of jail.
Oh my God!
You should. Let's give Dinesh a second.
Oh my God!
I agree.
So.
Oh my God, man! Cenk, you might as well have just like shanked the guy live on stage. Jesus.
This is an important point.
I agree.
Give a second. So,
I agree.
Just explain to us what exactly happened with that.
I just want to live on my land and be completely self-sufficient and not pay your taxes.
1 second. Let's. What was it? Did he go for? Wasn't it election fraud or something? Dinesh D'Souza. Let's look it up. I just wanted to check it quick. Authorship, filmmaking. Where is the campaign finance violation, felony guilty plea, conviction, and pardon? Was charged with making a $20,000 in illegal campaign contributions to New York Senate campaign of Wendy Long and causing false statements to be made to the Federal Election Commission. His attorney responded to the charges by saying his client did not act with any corrupt or criminal intent whatsoever and described the incident at most an act of misguided friendship. Rejected the contention, was singled out for persecution, stating the court concludes the defendant has respectfully submitted no evidence he was selectively prosecuted. So he violates the law and then says, like, I'm being persecuted for being conservative. No evidence provided. Okay. And then he stayed 8 months in a halfway house. Got it. And had to pay a $30,000 fine. Was then later pardoned by Trump. Okay. Got it. So campaign finance violations.
After 3 years, the town would come, kick you off of your property, and seize your land.
How would you know it's your land? How would you prove that it's your land?
Well, in theory, you would have a property deed, because that's what happens when you buy property.
Who would issue the property deed?
You get a deed. Well, right now, there are governments that issue those things. And what I'm saying is we're talking about the current paradigm of how could you own land? And there are things right now that exist. When you go buy land, you get a deed for the land.
Right.
If you're talking about what would happen in a free society, then there would be competing agencies probably that would issue such deeds.
Which one would
You're
be
asking me to centrally plan liberty, and that's not what I'm interested in. What I'm interested in,
Wait
Sam,
a sec. I want to hear about that other
having the
paradigm.
right. Hold on, Sam. Hold on. Let me finish my thought, and if you keep trying to piss me off, I will disconnect from the call. So you're asking me to centrally plan liberty. I'm not interested in centrally planning liberty. I'm interested in promoting the idea of human freedom.
Okay.
Human freedom?
Liberty. I'm interested in promoting the idea of human freedom.
Okay, so.
Oh, freedom.
So wait a second. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. I'm just trying to figure out.
I think you absolutely did mean to upset me.
No,
I think you absolutely do want to try to push me into a corner to where you can say, see, you don't have the answers of how freedom works. Damn it, Sam. Nobody has all the answers on how freedom works. That's why freedom is so important, because people should have the right to make decisions that other people might not agree with. That's why I support freedom. That's why I love freedom.
Well, Darryl,
because
why he keeps saying Friedel? What does he mean by what is human? I thought, does he mean freedom or Friedel? What is Friedel? I assume he means freedom, but he keeps saying Friedel. Now, I am not one to hold somebody too much to account to mispronouncing things. There is a long, probably somebody could make like 20 compilations of me mispronouncing things at this point. But what the fuck is Friedel? I think it's just his mic. It might be his mic, but you can't. Okay, if somebody so he's openly admitting that he doesn't have the answers. So just, yeah, you can admit you have you can just say like, hey, I don't have the answer to that question, but this is something that maybe could be the answer or something along those lines. Of course, if somebody thinks you don't have the answer to that question and they have a different model or perspective on how the world's managed, they're going to question you about those places you don't have the answers for how your system's going to work. So why are you getting angry? That should be something you expect. If I went onto the show of a conservative and they asked me about like, hey, Dylan, so you believe international institutions should have a vocal role in how the world's managed. Yet, when we look at the UN, look at the Security Council, one veto could destroy any initiative you're really trying to put forward. How do you answer that? How do we get rid of that? You know what my answer would be? I have no clue. I have no clue. while I think that we should have an international model when it comes to how these things are managed, I actually don't know how we're going to get rid of that. That is something that I'm constantly trying to find an answer for. Just say that. But getting angry, why would I get angry? That's a legitimate question. And if it's something I don't have an answer for, I should actually expect them to ask me that question.
I'm smart enough to know that I don't know how to run your life.
And I think the Democrats, I don't think they tried to flip the results in 2016 for the most part. There was a whole lot of the Hillary can still win stuff. And
Hillary conceded the next day.
But
absolutely not even remotely similar.
It's remotely similar.
No,
I would say it's
maybe
not,
like
it's
the
not
way
same
that
thing.
Antarctica is remotely close to like Pluto.
Do you see the videos of celebrities saying the Electoral College must vote for Hillary Clinton?
Do you think there's a difference?
Well, I'm sorry,
between,
they didn't say that.
Do you think there's a difference between celebrities saying something and the president of the United States trying to undermine the election?
I mean, if we use it like this, then like, let's say that just 2024 comes around and just one random like celebrity that nobody cares about just said, don't concede. Then we're going to say that's on par with tons of congressmen, tons of senators, tons of these different politicians who are mainstream people in the Republican Party who are gaining influence and power is the same as Britney Spears, who has a daytime special, or is not Britney Spears. She's just in my head because of the Free Britney movement. But whatever celebrity saying something, who cares? Is that good they said that? No, it's not good they said that. But we can't say that's equivalent to people who are sitting senators and city congressmen trying to reject the results of the election. Definitely after we saw the Capitol was stormed.
That's why I'm saying these aren't remotely similar. Yes, undermine.
See, that's framing.
Well, it's when you say so.
Legally
In 2016, Trump said millions of illegals voted. He asserted that with no evidence. That's undermining the integrity of our election. And then in 2020, he's saying that there was widespread election fraud, that literally no agency, no other credible person has backed up, save for the melting head of Giuliani. Like, no one else is backing up on this. His own DHS turned on him on this with his own appointee. His own attorney general, the sword and shield.
What did he say?
Barr came out and said that as of right now, there is no evidence of widespread election fraud.
If you look at the Second Amendment doesn't guarantee a right to own a warship. Right, it doesn't guarantee your right to own a cannon. Even back.
But hold on a second. One of the main tenets of those who are constitutionalists is that the Constitution only says what you can't do, and the Second Amendment doesn't say you can't own a warship.
No, correct. No, the Second Amendment. No, that is true. The Second Amendment doesn't
They're
say
negative, right? So in other words, it's not actually. You're wrong on that.
It's a very simple argument from my point of view.
Okay, I will say that a lot of these right here are like edited in a way that I really don't like, where it's like he'll make a point that it'll immediately cut off, even if nothing of like any like importance was said after that. Just show that, because it looks like you're just cutting him off before he responds to his question. Could have been edited better.
Have the right to bear arms in order to prevent tyranny. Then that goes for arms to prevent. That goes to the ultimate limit of that is the arms necessary to prevent. Basically, you can own.
Ben Shapiro looks super young here. When was this? When was this clip? This looks like straight out of college Shapiro. This was 4 years ago. 2014. Okay, 4 years in 2014 is actually a significant difference. 6 years ago? Okay, that sounds more accurate.
Any arm that is necessary, not to prevent tyranny.
Well, this is good because in Waco, Texas, the government used tanks. Isn't it then reasonable to say people need tanks because they were used in Waco, Texas?
Because this is the balance that we draw, right? And this is true for all legislation.
It's totally subjective, though, Ben.
Not totally subjective. The fact is that if you disarm a population of rifles, there is no chance that it could be a popular resistance to tyranny. Period.
And if you only give them rifles and the tanks roll out, the rifles are useless.
I'm glad to know that you guys are against the death penalty. I just want to say that. I'm so pro-life. So you're against the death penalty. I'm against the death penalty. I love the death penalty. I'm not. So you're not pro-life. So you're not pro-life. So you're not pro-life. I love the death. So you're not pro-life. No, I'm pro-life. No, but I think.
Okay, so the thing is with the death, I've already said this a million times, and I'm gonna say it a million more when it comes to the death penalty. The death penalty is an incompetency of its finest. It is something that is purely based in emotions. So there's a million reasons why. The first reason is the main reason why people support the death penalty is the idea that the death penalty will disincentivize crime. That the idea that we are executing people so people in the future say, like, man, that guy was executed, I don't want to go out and murder people. That's not how that works. It doesn't. The death penalty has zero correlation with the disincentivization of crime. We can look at the studies in Japan that have been released. We can look at studies in the United States that have been released. We can look at any of the studies released by major colleges and universities in the United States. We can look at the studies in Europe. We can look at the studies anywhere to show that that isn't the case. The one I have on hand is the Japanese study, though. And if you don't trust those studies, we could look at how psychologists have talked about it, and they agree with what I just said. Or we can look at the fact that states that don't have the death penalty tend to have a lower crime rate than states that do have the death penalty. Not only that, but nations, if you scale this up, nations that don't have the death penalty tend to have a lower crime rate than nations that do have the death penalty. It does not decrease crime. It doesn't. That's the first thing. The second thing is it's actually quite expensive. A lot of people are in favor of the death penalty, maybe if they heard it doesn't disincentivize crime under the idea of like, well, I don't want to have to pay money to feed so-and-so evil monster. Now, to be fair, they will admit that that's completely emotional. That isn't like a argument out of, hey, I deeply care about like keeping people safe. It is purely an emotional argument. They'll admit that. What they won't say is like how expensive it actually is to put somebody to death in the United States. Now, somebody could say, but the cost of a bullet is quite low. But in the United States, we try to consider ourselves a civilized country, so to speak. And that means we have an appeals process. And if you are sentenced to death, the appeals process is automatic. If you're going to be killing somebody, you want to be pretty sure that they're the right guy. I remember the last people we put to death in the state of Maryland, it cost $35 million per person to put them to death. It was actually a lot more expensive than a lot of people would let on. Then there's the fact that it's had an extremely racist application, that you are, I think, 4 times more likely to be put on death row as a black person than a white person. Not only that, and this is the interesting thing, this is the thing that's the kicker. If there is a black victim of a crime, you're less likely to put on death row than if there's a white victim of a crime. Meaning, let's say you go out and murder a black person, you are less likely to put on death row than if you went out and murdered a white person. Meaning it is quite literally putting whiteness as a value when it comes to its value inherent in its life at a higher level than somebody being black. This, of course, becomes more extremely likely for you to be put on death row if you're a black person killing a white person instead of a white person killing a white person. Or, of course, a black person killing a black person or a white person killing a black person. If you're a white person killing a black person, you're the least, one of the least likely to actually be put on death row. So it's quite literally putting white life above black life. Then we could talk about the long history of the death penalty being used against mentally disabled people. We could talk about coerced confessions. We can talk about how right now, like some of the lowest estimates for death row when it comes to innocent people currently on death row, I think is like around 4 to 5%. And that's the low estimate, meaning that we're a system that values innocence very much. That we want to be able to one day, if we accidentally felt that we put you behind bars, even though we want to put everything in the way of prioritizing keeping innocent people out of prison, we kill innocent people with the criminal justice system all the time. All the time. And that is true with the death penalty as well. And if we find out after the fact, and we don't do a lot of like retrials after somebody's dead because they're dead, what are you going to do? If you find out they're innocent, like open up the urn and pour their ashes out the window, it's kind of pointless then. But if we do find out they're innocent at that point, they're already dead. We can't release them. Already we've destroyed their lives to a huge extent by keeping them locked away. The least we can do is reimburse them for that time and try to let them live out the rest of their days. But if they're dead, that's impossible. And then there's, of course, the last thing where people will say is, well, even if you acknowledge all of that, you can say, well, one day, with DNA evidence, we'll be able to get it 100% accurate. We have been saying that for years, that with this new technology, we have 100% accuracy when getting people behind bars. With this new technology, with this fancy new doohickey, everybody behind bars today, we know, was the killer. We've been saying that for years. It hasn't been true up to this date. We've been finding out more and more today with the new wonder weapon discovery device, which was DNA evidence that we thought was going to be the perfect thing to solve it all. There's actually a lot of errors and a lot of problems with DNA evidence that's put innocent people behind bars and most likely killed innocent people. So yeah, the death penalty is incompetent. It is something purely based out of emotions of a not a rehabilitative system, but a retributive system, like a system of you wanting to get revenge against the killer while not keeping people safe. And you could be like, well, what about the victims' families? Well, what about the emotions of them? In the majority of cases, or at least the plurality, I don't remember, when a family pushes for and eventually the person is killed, put to death, the family is surprised to find that them killing that individual did not bring their family member back. That a lot of them thought, for some reason, whatever it is, that if they killed that person, that it would bring their family member back. That's just not the case. It doesn't. Of course it doesn't. I'm sure they all know that's the case. But maybe somewhere in the back of their head, they thought it would.
I'm pro-life and I'm also pro-due process, which unfortunately one political party in this country has abandoned. So then you're against Guantanamo Bay. So then you're against Guantanamo Bay.
But let's just cut through the talking points because,
you're for due process, you're against Gitmo. Guys, if you're for due process, you're against Guantanamo Bay. No, I'm for due process for American citizens. I'm not for due process for terrorists.
Look at him.
All right, guys, I'm going to step in here. I'm going to leave the convention.
I love the only Americans deserve due process. If you're not an American, you don't deserve due process. We can do with you what we want. If we want to take you in a back alley, shoot you in the head, and leave you in a ditch, it's whatever. No due process for anyone who isn't American. Jeez, man. The mask just ripped off.
It's easy if he keeps walking right into the trap like that.
But another thing that we just wrote about, and again, people get mad with the weed issue. Well, no. Traffic fatalities regarding marijuana have skyrocketed.
Google that because that's nonsense.
No,
okay, but there have been tests where they showed people
But that would go back to what he said and what you said.
But there have been tests where they've shown people drunk versus on marijuana, and the people on marijuana drove far better.
Okay.
That's true.
So this is also anecdotal.
No, these are tests.
It goes back to your point, right?
Let's
say someone
This is anecdotal? He just gives you an example. Like, these are studies. No, that's anecdotal. And then just burrows past it. Wait, what do you mean it's anecdotal? It's the test.
Has alcohol in their system.
Steven Crowder does know that calling something anecdotal doesn't just mean you're calling it stupid. It means like it's a personal anecdote.
I haven't read your test.
Okay, so why are you arguing?
Destiny mentioned during this vid that arguing about drugs with Joe Rogan is one of the stupidest things Crowder has done. That is true. If there's anything I wouldn't want to debate Joe Rogan on, it was drugs. I could go on that podcast and he could tell me that 20 people have overdosed on marijuana. And I'm thinking, like, I know that's not true. People can't overdose on marijuana. That's impossible. But I wouldn't argue it with him. You want to know why? Because no matter how much I think I know about the issue, Joe Rogan has done more drugs in one day than it would be possible for me to do in the entirety of my life. I think I'm good.
Arguing against them.
No, I'm saying I agreed with your point earlier.
So why are you saying they're anecdotal?
Well, it is anecdotal if you're saying some people drive better on marijuana
No,
than
I'm
alcohol.
not saying that. I've said there have been tests where they've shown that people drive better on marijuana than alcohol. That's not anecdotal.
My point is, if you want to smoke weed, go ahead.
You're looking to be really good at this argument here.
No, I'm not.
You need to settle down.
You said you wouldn't pile on, and you got two people.
I'm not piling down. He's not talking.
Yeah, it is.
He's not talking. He brought something up.
What do you mean piling on? He's talking to him. He's talking by himself.
When someone comes on the show, Jared cannot interject.
Congratulations, you're not on the show. And all he did was pull up some fucking information.
Two people bringing up information, me without a laptop.
No, he brought it up. I talked about it. He didn't even talk about it.
You said, what would be the one thing that you've changed your mind on that you would look back?
Is there a problem when two people are correct and you're incorrect? Does that bother you?
I don't agree that you're correct.
What are you talking about? You just pulled up some statistics that show that Colorado has less traffic fatalities.
No, I didn't.
Since
I didn't pull up any
2000.
statistics.
No, he did.
You just said you.
It's utilitarianism versus
Oh my
deontology.
God.
That you're quantifying versus I'm not. You see what I'm not saying.
Oh my God. Here it is. By the way, Tim Pool asserts that Sam Seder's too scared to go on his program after he went onto his program It made Tim Pool look kind of silly. And now Sam Seder has agreed publicly, like, hey, I will come on your program again. And Tim Pool's just ignoring the fact that he said that it'll come on. He's like, yep, Sam Seder said he won't come on. And he's like right now publicly saying, I will come on. I didn't want to come during COVID. I will come right now. And Tim Pool, like, just putting his fingers in his ears, yep, Sam Seder won't come on. Is this the one where Tim Pool famously like tries to compare Sam Seder to Thanos, and he just doesn't care?
I'm saying you're wrong. I'm saying
it's a great moment.
Your philosophical standard is the minimization of harm, and mine is more about the individual is the small. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
I'm curious about the second part of that. You said you know what I mean, because I really don't.
Joe is also right. Well, I assumed he was. Being drunk is 17.8 times as likely to be in a fatal accident versus high 1.62%. Yeah, that sounds about right. Damn. Is that University of Japan? Waseda University. Man, a lot of Japanese studies recently on the channel. A lot of Japanese studies.
Oh, so there's two. The two philosophies
about feeling
violating the ethics of an individual is violating ethics regardless, and yours is minimization of harm is better. So utilitarian versus deontological. From my standpoint, committing one unethical act is a violation of principle and ethics that can't be crossed. But I will admit, there's not like a hard line. It's you know.
I think that is silly, to be honest with you.
I mean, I respect you, you know, but they're very strong philosophical positions held by most people.
I believe that less suffering is better, and that I am willing to.
I will tell you something you won't like to hear, though.
I'm willing to sully myself if that's the outcome.
But I'll tell you something you're not going to want to hear, and I admit it's I'll call it dickish. Utilitarianism is typically the villain in most movies.
I don't care.
Yeah. So for instance, like Thanos was utilitarian, and Captain America was deontological.
I didn't.
So Thanos willing to reduce the suffering by killing, you know, hundreds of trillions, versus the thousands of trillions, which would be living better off.
There was a testimony before Congress from LA communities where black witnesses.
I'm imagining like honorable jury. Wait. Let me get the Phoenix Wright music. Let me get the Phoenix Wright music. 1 second. Just the right one. No, not cornered. I want the normal Phoenix Wright music. Where is it? Here it is. Honorable jury, I want to bestow upon you some knowledge. Now, this person says they did not commit the crime and has provided much evidence to the court. But have you considered the fact that they, in the scenario, would be Thanos, or perhaps Venom from the Spider-Man series? Venom being the person who is infected by the space alien virus. So that is why you should sentence this man to the electric chair. Thank you. Don't really think that would go over too well in court.
For going in saying, my kid applied to the local McDonald's, they wouldn't hire him because he didn't speak Spanish. It is mostly black communities that are being overwhelmed with illegal immigrants, and to be mocking them and saying they're afraid of Spanish people, I think is very dismissive and insulting.
Well, here's what happens in this free, hold on. You like the free market, right? You love the free market. I love the free market as well, as long as you don't have... Let me finish my point.
Keep going.
Okay. In a free market, of course, there will be competition for certain jobs, right? And so the most skilled worker is likely to get that position. Being bilingual is a skill. You're able to communicate. And I get it.
You know, have you ever thought about bootstraps, Miss Coulter, and pulling them up?
If you're not bilingual, it makes you uncomfortable. You're not as competitive. But guess what? You know, we live in a country where you have all the resources at your fingertips. You could learn a language for free online. And so enough with this victimhood, because I feel like there's a lot of victimhood coming from you right now. Right?
The thing is, what I love about, so this is not, what is not Ann Coulter, what Anna Kasparian is doing here, and I love doing this, it's always a blast, is instead of like making an argument that you would make to one of your liberal friends, just completely just like turn it around and make every argument from a conservative perspective. Number one, there's tons of resources out there that you could grasp right now to make America your dream, to capture the American dream. Number two, what about the free market, baby? And number three, stop being a victimhood. I hate victimhood culture. Just taking usually these traditionally quote unquote right-wing arguments and trying to turn them on their face to maybe throw people off their feet who are like usually used to hearing these arguments used to defend conservative talking points.
Right? If you want to compete for these jobs, go out there and learn. Pick yourself up by the bootstraps. Learn a new language. There's nothing wrong with knowledge.
But none of that matters because the climate hysteria movement is not about science.
It's probably one of the most effective possible argumentation tactics. If someone can't even argue inside their own framework, then they're screwed 100%.
If it were about science, it would be led by scientists rather than by politicians and a mentally ill Swedish child who is being exploited by her parents and by the international left. So what you're seeing here is a political movement and a religious movement, and it's fulfilling religious and political goals of the left, but it isn't doing very much for science.
Chris, you had a visceral reaction to that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you're a grown man and you're attacking a child. Shame on you. She's trying to do what she thinks is right. And by the way, now relax, skinny boy. I got this. Okay, you're attacking a child. You're a grown man. Have some cool.
I'm not. I'm attacking the left for exploiting a mentally ill
child. Maybe on your podcast, you get away and say whatever you want because nobody's listening. You're on national television. Be a grown up.
Oh, oh my. Okay. I can't argue because nobody listens to my podcast either, but there's something that really hits in the gut, and maybe it hit in the gut for me because I also have a podcast, but this is, maybe you can say whatever you want on your podcast because nobody is listening, but this is national television. That hurts, and Michael went from smiling to not smiling very fast at that comment.
I'm attacking the left for exploiting a mentally ill child.
Maybe on your podcast, you get away and say whatever you want because nobody's listening. You're on national television. Be a grown-up when you're talking about children. She's trying to save the planet because your president doesn't believe in climate change, and kids need to take to the streets to worry about their future. You are despicable for talking to her about her like that, and you should apologize on national television right now.
I think the international left and her parents who are exploiting a girl with many mental illnesses.
You called her mentally ill. Take it back now.
She is mentally ill. Take it back now. She is mentally ill. She has autism. She has obsessive compulsive disorder. She has selective mutism. She had depression.
The thing is, okay, depression. Okay, so the problem is, if you want to talk about mental illness, we can talk about mental illness. But the problem is you're using mental illness as a weapon to attack a child, as if she is... God, there is children just having a blast outside. It sounds like they're... No, they are not having a blast. That child is crying. Okay. The thing that's interesting about this is... Jeez. So, he is going after her for that mental illness. On one side, it's okay to like discuss mental illnesses, but if you're trying to use their mental illness to discredit their position, for example, I've struggled with depression for a good part of my life. If someone was to be like, because it would be like, what he's saying is similar to something like this. You listen to DylanBurnsTV, that guy's mentally ill, right? He went to a ward one point. He's mentally ill. You're getting your information from a mentally ill person. You listen to mentally ill people for their political opinion. It's pretty equivalent, because what he's doing is, if he was just going over the idea that, well, it's parents with a child and, maybe there's some exploitation. It's the mentally ill part that's supposed to get the extra, like, deep stab in there with the point. And that's where I find, like, a lot of, like, just disgusting behavior there, is because he's not saying that out of concern for the child. He's saying it out of trying to discredit the position, as if somebody who has a history of mental illness, not even talking about Like, well, this is why this specific person or this specific mental illness might be considered when we're talking about this. Just somebody with mental illness, period, should not be listened to for the political opinion, which is really gross. Because a lot of people are depressed. A lot of people have autism and are high functioning and can 100% have political opinions. I have no clue why that would be something you'd go after.
Despicable.
Her mother wrote about.
And that war was over in 1945. Civil War was over in 1865, and we are still at the effect of this underlying stuff that we move on from one generation to another.
But
so
do you think
when
there's
apologize, I'm sorry.
Well, do you think there's a little bit of a risk in sort of, I mean, a couple of times you're referencing the genocide of the Jews to slavery. Seems like a little bit of a slippery slope there, no?
I don't even know how we can say that, actually, and I say that as a Jew. Have you read up much on slavery?
Yeah.
We're talking abject slavery, Dave. I mean, nobody's in a contest. Nobody has a monopoly on human suffering. This was abject slavery. And also, if you started...
The thing is, what does he mean by slippery slope? Is he trying to rank like the Holocaust comparative to slavery when it comes to human suffering and death tolls? Is he trying to be like, well, okay, is he trying to downplay slavery? Why would he? Okay, just to be clear, slavery was not just a thing like inside America, people were in chains and that's just like the bounds of slavery. We had people taken from their homes, from their families. People, children waking up and dad and mom are gone. Where are dad and mom? They're on ships headed to America. Your parents are just gone. That's how families were ripped apart, where the kid just lost their entire family in one day from being traded away or being caught. And then they are put on ships and sent across the United States. People would die and they would just be thrown into the ocean. No dignity. It wasn't like a funeral at sea. They were taken and thrown into the ocean if they died. No care. They would try to stuff as many human beings into a can, like a sardines, into these ships. They would be so close with no proper bathing. It would smell terrible. You would get disgusting, rotten food. You'd be treated like garbage. Then you get to the United States. You're finally out of that environment. Then you're put in change. And if you somehow were able to stay with your family at that point, most certainly you face the topic of separation. Not to mention, they'll do everything possible to strip your culture from you. And then the rape, the systematic rape of black women, the rape of black men, the beatings and killings and shootings. And if you try to flee, you could be tortured and killed and lynched. And this didn't just happen for a few years. This was hundreds of years. Across the world. There was an international slave trade. And even when people stopped being shipped directly from Africa to America, the slavery as an institution continued past that until 1865. And we could talk about Juneteenth and the Emancipation Proclamation. Even past that, we need to talk about apprenticeship programs and sharecropping and the exploitation of black workers past that, which a lot of times the apprenticeship programs basically amounted to just like a revamped version of slavery anyway. Like, no, let's not try to play this game of ranking that next to the Holocaust or, oh, it's a slippery slope. It was a barbaric institution, a disgustingly barbaric institution.
Slavery in 1619, and you had 2.5 years, 2.5 centuries, and then at the end, there were 4 to 5 million enslaved people. Do you realize generation after generation how many millions of people we're talking about?
Right. Well, I'm not diminishing that, but you can also talk about the extermination of 6 million people and the amount of people that never lived because of that.
You talk about both. Yeah, they both.
Or your
bad.
ancestors from Russia who were never given anything and came here.
Well, wait a minute. But the Germans had paid reparations. That's kind of my point. The fact that Germany paid reparations. Germany has done full-on mea culpa.
It seems like everyone's kind of veering to some version.
Germany has paid reparations for World War II. colonialism, a lot of people don't know this. Germany was one of, quote unquote, the smaller colonial powers, as in they didn't have a ton of colonial holdings, but they did. I think it was in Nambia. And they're just right now having that debate. And I think there actually was a negotiated settlement with the government on reparations for the slaughters and killings that they did in Africa as well. That is something that's actually never discussed, like, widely. Like, most people don't even know about that. People don't know about Germany's colonial crimes. Colonial crimes are kind of like brushed under the bed, under the desk, under the rug, or whatever, in comparison to like the more well-known crimes. It's much like the starvation of India and how it was treated during the Second World War by Winston Churchill. That's more easily ignored, sadly.
Of open borders, that's somehow something kind of.
No, you
so
say
tell
you're a
me.
Democrat. Where do you get this?
Well, I don't consider.
You say I'm a Democrat.
No, I don't consider myself a Democrat anymore. I don't consider myself a Republican, but I'm definitely not a Democrat.
I have not heard one candidate.
Well, they won't say it, but the policies seem to be.
You don't say it, but you really. I mean, is that healthy, honorable debate? You say it if you believe it. I don't believe it. You can have healthy.
No, I take them at their word.
What has Trump done to make it easier for businesses to get going?
By cutting back on so many rules and regulations that the Democrat had established.
Like what's an example of such a rule?
I don't have anything in mind right now.
Yeah.
But a lot of the rules and regulations that was preventing small businesses from starting have been taken away by the Great White Hope.
What would be, so give me I know that there's dozens and dozens, but what's one such rule that was taken away that now makes it easier to start a business?
Nothing come to mind right now.
Is there anything that you can remember even seeing at any time?
Nothing come to mind at this time.
Wow.
No.
That's amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Your book is a criticism of how angry America is and how America has to do better.
This is a classic.
I have an entire list on my website, sir. On my list, I have an entire website of dumb, bad things that I've said. I'm simply trying to point
out some of the things you've...
Yeah, but it's your website, and I don't know how many people visit the websites into the bad things he said. By the way, when it comes to Ben Shapiro's websites on bad, dumb things that he said, I recently did a video maybe a week or 2 weeks ago talking about an old article I wrote about Palestinians where he called the Palestinian population evil to the core. I don't think he ever added that to the list. There's a lot of things he said that he hasn't, quote unquote, added to the list of self-flagellation or it's not flagellation. What is it? I forget what it's called. So, I mean, there's still a lot of stuff he should be held accountable for.
You've said that seemed to me to help to stoke that anger. For example, you said
the dumb things website has a paywall. Oh, that makes sense.
Sure.
Israelis like to build. Arabs like to bomb crap and live in open sewage.
Well, as I say in an article entitled, here's a list of all the giant, bad, dumb things I've ever said.
Was that dumb?
Yes, that's a dumb tweet. And not only, but it is also important to mention that the next few tweets clarify that tweet is specifically referring to the Hamas leadership, which, by the way, a BBC I've seen is relatively reticent to condemn.
No,
Wait, to be clear, it doesn't matter if you're... Okay, the statement on its own should be enough to be like, okay, that's disgusting. But let's say for a moment we believe that it is about Hamas leadership. You're still perpetuating stereotypes, right? For example, let's say that I said a racist thing about Chinese people and chopsticks, like something just like openly racist about, I just used it like a Chinese stereotype. And then when people ask me, I was like, no. I just meant the Chinese Communist Party. That ultimately is still going to be directed at Chinese people and is going to perpetuate those stereotypes. So him saying that they like to live in open sewage, even if he just meant Hamas leadership, which I don't know if I really accept, but let's say that's the case, it's still perpetuating that stereotype.
Actually, it wasn't what you went on to do and say, you are correct about the slur on Arabs. It's not all Arabs that want to live in open sewage and blow things up. It's just Palestinians, you went on to say.
It says the ones who take sides against Israel in the Israel-Palestinian conflict.
Population is rotten to the core, you went on to say. Not Hamas.
That right there, that article right there is one I've read in full on this channel. Actually, not completely. I've read like half it on the channel, but I've read it all personally. That one, the rotten to the core article he wrote, that is one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen Ben Shapiro write, and I don't even think that it's on his apology list. And I haven't actually. This is actually the first interview where I saw somebody bring it up to him. Does he actually respond to this? I don't remember.
The Palestinian Arab population.
Frankly, I find this whole thing a waste of time. If you want to read the book and critique the book, why don't you read and critique the book? If you want to critique me, you can think whatever you want of me.
Why don't you
frankly,
just try and
I don't
answer
care.
the
I don't
questions?
frankly give a damn what you think of me since I've never heard of you. I'm not inclined to continue an interview with a person as badly motivated as you as an interviewer. So I think we're done here. I appreciate your time.
All
sir.
right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time and for showing that anger is not part of American political discourse. Now, Mr. Shapiro, we'll say goodbye.
We have to care about the environment. It was progress. And it's like, no, we've been losing. America has been losing. And Donald Trump understood that in a way that I didn't. And
I don't think we have to care about the environment? Like, what do you...
No, not even a little bit.
Not even a little bit?
No. Okay, let me clarify this. I don't throw trash on the ground. I'm not saying we need to trash the environment. But do I believe in climate change? No.
You don't believe in...
She's one of the type of people, Candice Owens, that picks up a turtle and directly shoves like a plastic straw into its mouth. She's not just I want my plastic straws. She is using plastic straws as turtle darts, just throwing them at the local baby turtles as they try to flee into the ocean.
Climate change.
Well, I think the climate always changes, I guess is what I should say. Do I believe that this is an issue that is being that is fatal?
What do you mean? The climate always changes. Okay, you shove me into a microwave. No. Let's say I shove somebody into a microwave, and it starts getting hotter. Hey, you just shoved me into a giant microwave. I'm burning up. This is getting worse. And then I say well, things get hotter, things get colder. Who cares? Yeah, the temperature changes, but it's been on a gradual increase for a while now, and at a speed that is alarming. Not only when it comes to protecting species or when it comes to sea levels, or when it comes to international droughts or access to clean water or infrastructure and how this is going to damage infrastructure. Or you can talk about how the military has released reports talking about how this is going to damage military effectiveness. All these different things. And then you just say, well, the temperature go uppy, it go downy, who knows? If it's going to have a devastating effect on the world, I think maybe we should react to that.
Global warming, which they've changed conveniently. They got rid of the word once scientists started disproving it. Now they only say climate change. No, I think that was just a way to extract dollars from Americans. I don't at all believe. They had no actionable plan. It was great for Trump to get out of that deal. It was terrible.
So, wait, just get dollars out of Americans, yet the rest of the international community and all international, respected international institutions, and basically every country on Earth also respects the fact that climate change is happening. So how is it just a plot to get tax dollars out of Americans? Is it a plot to get tax dollars out of every people on the planet? There's a lot of countries in the world who acknowledge that something's going on, but they don't want to do anything about it. What about them? What's the plot there? What's the secret mission there? I don't think Vladimir Putin is really at the front of the international community right now, let's get off fossil fuels. His economy is pretty reliant on the stuff. But that doesn't mean he's on the international stage climate change is a big hoax.
Okay, but this is an incredibly complicated subject.
Right.
And if you would have to talk to a bunch of different scientists and see how they gather data and see what they understand about CO2 levels and what's the danger of them and what can combat it and what could not. Have you done all this? Or
no. Have you guys seen the see, we're going to talk about Q-Force later, which I'm not excited for. Seen a congressman brings snowball into Congress. Have you guys seen this?
The C-SPAN networks bring you long-form public affairs programming from the nation's capital.
This is Candice Owens.
Service of your television.
This is basically what Candice Owens just tried to do when it came to global warming. Well, they don't call it global warming anymore. They call it climate change.
Provider. C-SPAN, created by cable.
Thanks for the sub.
National attention.
Appreciate it.
In case we have forgotten, because we keep hearing that 2014 has been the warmest year on record, I asked the chair, you know what this is? It's a snowball. And that's just from outside here. So it's very, very cold out, very unseasonal. So here, Mr. President, catch this.
What a genius. What a genius.
take this flippant opinion based
listen,
on the party line.
This wouldn't be the hill I died on, right? But it's not about the party. I just genuinely, I've read a ton about it, but I would not be able to come to you and say like, this is my strong opinion. But here's like the easiest way to say this,
just
right?
keeps going, doesn't answer.
The fact that there is a disparity in the science community about whether or not it's real is enough to.
It's very little, very little disparity. Most scientists, the vast majority agree that human beings are negatively affecting climate change.
Yeah.
The vast majority.
Yeah, I just don't think so.
What I'm trying to talk about is the totality of evidence that he has mishandled.
Do I remember that vid of mom microwaving a snowball saying it's fake snow? I haven't. Someone please send that to me. Hey, look, it's the former Hippy Dippy champion.
This pandemic, and it's interesting to me that you were extremely unwilling to criticize him for that.
Because what's the alternative?
The alternative.
What would have happened in any other circumstance where we have no control group? What am I supposed to say?
So,
well, if
wait,
Trump
how many would have
backflipped,
how many would have had to have died before you would criticize him?
I don't know.
Give me a number. Wait, so you could have let 1 million?
So what you're telling me is that we have no idea what would have happened if Trump did anything else.
We don't
and now
ever.
We're supposed to make a determination.
That's you're making a tautological statement. That's how the universe works. We don't ever know what would happen if other things.
What am I supposed to say when Fauci early on praised him, when governors early on praised him? Now they're critical of him in an election.
Wait. First of all, the praise of governors is irrelevant. Are governors health experts? Second of all, Fauci praised him a couple of times. He's also under a lot of political pressure to do what Trump says, or otherwise there's a very decent chance of him getting canned. Fauci has made plenty of statements which Trump has later contradicted. Trump has been back and forth on the mask issue going so
far.
What
I don't understand is individuals who, on one hand, it's like, hey, remember Fauci endorsed and Fauci like praised Trump on X issue or B issue, and then we'll go on to be like, also Fauci is completely discredited. Why are you trying to use him endorsing one of Trump or two of Trump's policies as like a wow, look how great Trump was, while also trying to discredit Fauci? Then why are you even spending time trying to use him to endorse Trump's policies?
To make fun of people for wearing masks.
I do not.
You claim to have like this a disaffected sort of like anti.
Here it is.
So I'm sitting here standing here actually with the snow, and I seen a video on YouTube about the snow not being real, and I'm a strong believer that you can't believe everything that you see. So I wanted to find out for myself. So I have some snow here, and I'm gonna see if I can melt it.
I love the Family Guy just in the background. Didn't even bother to turn it off.
As you can see here, is it melting?
Wow.
Let me push it back a little bit so you can see.
I'm convinced. Chat, this is undeniable proof.
Like the styrofoam thing or whatever.
This is a very obviously controlled and scientific environment. This obviously has had a lot of like peer review and, you know, very believable comparative to like, you know, what, the University of Maryland or any university of any status, or this right here is the pinnacle of American scientific achievement. The NASA scientists need to throw in the towel right now. Like, this is amazing.
No water, nothing.
What do you mean no water? I just saw water.
No,
look.
Whatever.
Look, you can see it. Right there.
No water.
You can see
nothing.
it. I just saw it drop. What do you mean no water? You can see it.
Thing
look.
Or whatever.
Look. See it?
No water.
Right there.
Nothing.
You see it. You see it go down quick.
So I'm gonna try and put it in a microwave and see what happens. See if it melts.
You can actually see. Why are you the what? You can literally see parts of it disappear as well. Exactly. You can even whatever.
The microwave.
Ah, yes. This is the controlled scientific environment on top of the Pizza Hut box. The Pizza Hut standard, when it comes to some containment and scientific research, has really brought us to the forefront of scientific achievement in the world.
Do it for like 20 seconds. What is going on with the microwave?
Wow.
It has like a burnt smell. Snow isn't melting.
Okay, there's a million things. She could have easily put in a chunk of metal in the snow. Maybe I'm stupid and I don't understand how microwaves work, but I was always taught you don't put metal in a microwave. Right? And I didn't want to say anything, but then I saw Chad agreeing with me because I thought maybe I'm just the stupidest man on the planet. But you don't put metal in a microwave. What's with the metal grate in the microwave? Is that me or... And you don't put styrofoam.
What the hell is this?
And we'll never know what the hell is this. I want to see the comments. It's just aluminum they put in the sky. No biggie, lol. This is insane. A few other people reported the same thing. There's videos in the past of people doing the same thing when they took it out of the microphone, even it melted. Heavy metals in the snow from the chemtrails. This is why shampoo have instructions.
Establishment view of all of this, but your channel is hyper partisan against the left, and then when anyone criticizes Trump, you'll either defend him harshly or you'll back up and say, well, they're all bad. You are taking the choice to defend Trump. You are the partisan here. You're not a distanced anti-authoritarian. You are standing with him and you are saying, yes, I am anti-authoritarian, I am anti-establishment, but also we don't know if him lying to the American people was bad. It could have caused a panic.
Again, as a general rule, I want you, David Pakman, as a small business owner, which you are with employees, to pay the least amount of taxes that you can so that you can hire more people, so that you can build a better studio, so that you can invest more in your operation and bring the goodness that is you and your operation out there. I know this as a small businessman now. If I had been being taxed higher right now, I had massive capital costs to build this studio and do all this stuff. By the way, I pay 100% of my employees' health insurance, 100%. I also give, my director gets a cut of our YouTube rev. I do.
Then wouldn't it be helpful for you as a businessman if you didn't have to pay 100% of your employees' health insurance and that was done by the government? Wouldn't that actually be extremely helpful for you as a businessman if you didn't have to consider the fact of like, hey, if I fire my employees, then they might not be able to get needed medical treatment for them to live? Just a thought.
All the things I try to put my beliefs into practice.
But that's the confusion for me, Dave, because those capital expenses are tax deductible. So if the tax rate goes up for you as an individual, if you've got pass-through income, or for the business tax rate, it doesn't matter what the business tax rate is if you want to spend money on capital, because you don't pay taxes on that. Actually, it encourages you to spend money on capital to have a higher tax rate.
So I understand what that argument is, and I would argue at the same time as that, that having every one of us, whether you...
I'm sorry, but if you start with something saying like, I understand what that argument is, it feels like you really don't understand. Like if you just say, I understand, and then you keep going, but the amount of time, I understand what that argument is. I don't know. It just... I don't know. Something about that feels like maybe he doesn't completely understand what Pakman just said. Listen, Dylan, I understand the argument you are currently making to me in this political debate environment. The argument that you just put forward is something that I understand. I comprehend the argument that you have laid down before my eyes. I am comprehending it, and I shall now respond to it.
However much you earn, it is your money.
Oh, no!
Wow, that really... Yeah, I really felt like he understood the argument.
Sam Seder, what a fucking nightmare. I had no idea this was going to happen.
Do you
Sam,
think
come on,
your audience cares that I only have 1 million subscribers and you have, what, 6 or 7 million subscribers?
Let me answer. Can I answer your question? Can I answer your question? Can I answer your question? Sure. You want me to answer your question? My audience would say Sam who?
Well, I know that Steven Crowder wouldn't say Sam who, because Steven Crowder was monitoring Sam Seder's show the week before because he was scared he was going to come on H3H3's program and canceled.
Just like Joe Rogan's audience and Ben Shapiro's and Dave Rubin.
Who I am.
Now they all know who you are because you had to shoehorn yourself into another coward show.
College students, every day that you do that, change my mind.
Hold on a second. Hold on
they
a second.
don't know who those college
This is another
students
lie.
are.
This is another lie.
Let
me clarify, Sam. Let me clarify, Sam. The change my mind, everyone knows on the show, right?
Yes.
We've had
How did
professors
you know
on the.
I ended my show early last week,
Calls
Stephen?
them out.
If your audience doesn't
Because
even
you're
know
an
me,
idiot,
how
and
did you
half
know
of your
that?
staff
Do you
doesn't
watch
like
my
you.
show?
Let's debate.
That's not. Don't really elaborate much on that.
Don't hide behind the glasses.
Don't be a coward.
Don't say let's debate, Ethan. You've lost
Coward.
Debate
the issues. What does it matter who you debate, coward?
All right, good. You guys are good. Thank you.
Coward.
Won't even take off the glasses.
I was right.
All right, yeah, you can
run away.
You run away twice. Cold feet again.
Come on, Stephen.
Wow.
What a blast. What a blast. Oh no, Sam Seder, what a fucking nightmare.